And welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives and the world's leading global brands. Today, we're joined by Jeri Doris, who's the Chief People Officer at Delivery Hero. Welcome to the show, Jeri. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Chris. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, appreciate you joining us. It's been a while since we last chatted, and given the current events, when I saw this coming up in my diary, I was like really excited, even more excited given what's happening in your own business as well. And just really excited to hear your perspective and to learn more really about what's happening. But before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit about yourself personally, and then just some context and background to the business, just for people that may not be aware of it.
So as Chris mentioned, my name is Jeri Doris, and I am the Chief People Officer here at Delivery Hero. We're based in Berlin, Germany, and we are the world's largest food delivery business in the world outside of China. And so we deliver things outside, just not only food, but we also deliver groceries. We recently pivoted into drinks, flowers, etc. It really depends on the market. So I've been here for a little over almost 2.5 years. I relocated, as you can tell from my accent, I relocated from the US. I was actually based in the Bay Area and relocated to Berlin for this job.
Wow. I didn't even realize that you pivoted to those other offerings as well. Wow.
Yeah, we originally started, several years ago as a marketplace for food delivery. And we had in 2019, so about a year ago, started to what we call D-marts. So they're dark stores, they're grocery stores, and they're smaller in nature. They have about 2,000 SKUs, and they're really quick. We call it quick commerce, Q-commerce. And so it's quick delivery. It's about, 15 to 20 minute delivery. And we started to pivot into that last year. And through this pandemic, it's been actually a part of our business that has seen quite a bit of activity because people need essential goods. They still need food, they're home. And so that's something that we've been accelerating over the last couple months. And so, but before that, we had already been looking and testing different markets. And for example, in our Latin American business, which is called Perdosia, one of our largest delivery items is drinks, and at different hours, as you can probably imagine, but of course it's food and whatnot. But we that's why we call ourselves actually the largest local delivery business, because we really do take a localized approach in terms of our overall business strategy.
Yeah, wow, I had no idea. Is it like in the UK where you have the laws that you can't deliver after a certain amount of time? Or is like 11 p.m.?
Yeah, and in our Middle Eastern business, you can imagine it probably is different things that we deliver, especially right now during Ramadan. It is completely locally based, whether or not we can deliver tobacco or we deliver types of food, etc.
Very complex then. It must be, there's a lot of moving parts.
Well, of course. That is the beauty and also the challenge in a massively diverse we're in over 42 markets. Actually, we have 18 brands, over 42 different countries, and each country's different, right? The local flavor, the local need is different, and that's why I really try to. That's why most people don't know our brand, right? Because Delivery Hero is the corporate brand, but in the local side, we really try to.
You know the brand in your local market. Tell me a bit more about how the current events has kind of disrupted your own industry and the effects of that. Because I was going to ask you earlier in this call, when we first introduced you, how many employees, but I'm sure that's changed in the last few months.
I actually about fell over when I saw the recent numbers of our writers, for example. The number of writers it's been exponential over the last couple months, and I think the last number I saw was 650,000 globally. Those are the ones that are in the front lines, that are delivering the goods, that are really going above and beyond. And so, we've had to pivot very quickly as a business in terms of making sure everybody in our delivery ecosystem was safe. Obviously, the restaurant partners, to our writers, and to our customers, etc. So, we saw this coming very early on. We had that benefit. But we're a big player in Asia, both in Korea and outside of across Asia Pacific. And so we had been kind of watching this come. And so we had to pivot pretty quickly on and do contactless delivery, contactless payment, because cash was still quite popular. Yep. In several markets. And so, but also institute hygiene factors that were just really important, from mask to sanitation to hand sanitizer, et cetera. And so, but there's been also a lot of I think local norms that we've had to take into effect, because in the Middle East, in a lot of our markets, they didn't like us to leave the bag on the ground. So, how do we make sure that we take that into consideration when we're keeping everybody safe, doing a contactless delivery, etc. On top of that, it's been an opportunity for us to also give back in the communities in which we operate, right? Because
Yeah.
Food insecurity has become a really big thing during this time. We also have a lot of elderly that are at risk, or just, populations in general that are at risk for not being able to have access to food. And also our writers are also at risk. A lot of them are on a freelancer basis, and so they don't have the support from the government. So we recently announced that we put together a writer relief fund for those who may not have the benefits supported by their government or insurance, etc. So making sure that we're trying to do our part and give back to the communities in which we operate. Also local economies, right? I mean, local economies are being so impacted during this time. And so making sure that we are trying to give restaurants who aren't on our platform easy access to our platform, because they've needed to pivot their business model, right? They've gone off online, and that might be really new and kind of scary for them. And so making sure that it is not cost prohibitive for them to do that, making sure it's easy for them to do that, and really providing them resources to do that. So it's been a learning experience. It's been amazing to also watch our team members across the world really come together in a unified way.
It's great to hear that and because CSR is also a part of your role, right? CSR and content, very important to you as well, both personally and professionally.
Absolutely. I asked for it. I think I get asked all the time. You're like, I get asked all the time. My remit's a little bit different. So I do see corporate social responsibility as well as corporate communication. Since we aren't a consumer brand, it's more of a corporate brand. And we really see the benefit of tying communications with the overall narrative and storyline for us. And so it was a new area for me. It's been a learning experience, but it's been one that's been super rewarding, especially during this time, to really kind of make sure that we're getting our message out there on how we can help. But yeah, corporate social responsibility is something that is near and dear to my heart. It is something that is at the forefront of our ambitions when we think of it as a business. And so I always get asked, like, why? Berlin's wonderful for anybody who's worried. But I always get asked, like, why would you move from San Francisco, the heart of San Francisco, to Berlin, Germany? And it was a conversation I had with Nicholas, our CEO. And I asked him, at that time, Delivery Hero had just gone public. It was July of 2017. We went public in June of 2017. And with most CEO founders, they're usually working towards a goal. And I asked him, I said, you've gone public, you've created or established a very successful business at that time. So what are you working towards? Like, what's your goal? And he said to me, he's like, I'm trying to create a company in which my kids are proud of. And to me, that worked, right? That resonated with me, and it was authentic, right? And so he's really meant that. And CSR is a big piece of that. And I think, as we both know, today people want to be able to tie what they do with the purpose.
Their why.
And what's their why? What is your why? What gets you, driven every day? And no better way to do that than be able to really be part of a company which you're proud of. And we work every day towards that, right? And some days we do better than others, but CSR, when it comes to employee engagement, there's a direct correlation, and I think it's a real opportunity. I'm a big believer that I think CSR should sit with People Ops and the People Ops organization, because there is a direct correlation with engagement and purpose. And your CSR strategy. So it's been really fun to manage that strategy and work with some really amazing people.
Yeah, and just to give people a bit of context, we mentioned the number 600,000 plus riders. What was that beforehand to what it is now over the last few months, roughly? And let's talk a bit more about how you managed to do that, which is an amazing story on its own, scaling so quickly. What did that look like from a logistical, technical point of view?
Right. I mean, we fluctuate when it comes to our rider population throughout the year, and I don't know offhand what the number was prior to that. And we always try to take the last couple of weeks of what is it, how many riders have actually stayed on, and so it's always going one way or the other. And so, writers are one population, and then we think about our workforce that's, our product and engineering, trying to pivot that app, the product experience. How do we move to contactless delivery, et cetera? When I started here at Delivery Hero, we were about 5,000. And I think our writer base was maybe 20,000 at that time. So just to kind of, and I could be wrong.
We understand. Like trying to keep track of that. We're not asking exact numbers.
Guys. But I do think, I think it's one of those things where you make sure your product can handle the growth. And I think there's been a lot of teams that have worked really, really hard on our writer app and making sure that we're quickly onboarding our writers so that they can get out there and do what they do. And they're such a massive, important part of our overall ecosystem. So there's different ways to do both. But I think you do it through really amazing teams, and that's the only way to do it.
Mm-hmm. But so that was 20,000 back in how many years ago?
2.5.
2.5, and then you are now 600,000.
Yeah. So with
crazy. Big off.
And I would say our employee population for within our business has gone from 5,000 to I think the last numbers I saw. We were 3 times that now. So and that's in 2.5 years. So I think it's really important. You're like, well, that's 15,000. So 15 to 20,000. It depends on our call centers, et cetera, our customer care, et cetera. And the way that you do that is to make sure. This was one of the things when I started here at Delivery Hero. There wasn't really a people strategy, and Nicholas was very honest about that. He's like, listen, like, we're already publicly traded. We haven't really focused on the people strategy, but we have a lot of great people.
Right? That's quite common. It's quite common for a lot of businesses in this space. I've seen that just from my conversations.
Yeah, I think typically, and this is the guidance I always give to startup founders, always like, when is the right time to hire a head of people? And we look different depending on what stage you're in, and we all have different things in which we like to do. I don't know how common it is to hire somebody after you go public. Usually it's kind of before, but it's fine. It turned out to be really this has been my most rewarding role to date. And I think it will be my most rewarding role probably in my entire career. I know that's hard to say, but I really do believe that. And I think one of the things that I did early on was just create a vision for our people ops organization, because it was so easy to want to do everything, right? It's so easy to want to prioritize everything. And I think the thing that people need to be able to know is, like, where are we going? Like, what are we working towards? And at the time, our company vision was to create an amazing takeaway experience. We've pivoted and now say creating an amazing, always creating an amazing experience, because we deliver more than just takeaway. But I just kind of took a derivative from that, right? And I said, hey, our North Star is to create an amazing employee experience. That is something that we still use today, right? We evaluate all of our projects. Does it get us closer to that vision? If not, then we don't do them. Same goes with hiring, right? Is making sure that you're putting in process that creates an amazing candidate experience. Because if you don't create an amazing candidate experience, then you're not probably going to convert that candidate. And so it's really important to make sure your process is agile, is adaptive, but it also identifies what matters most to you. And so we instituted and we put in our values and part of our hiring process, and that's how you also scale your culture or what matters most to you. And so we started with our vision, and we kind of worked on creating a foundation and going from there. And that was really what was important in the overall process. And it's still something that we use today. So of course, with any vision, you can iterate on it in the future, and we probably will. I don't know that we'll ever create, our goal is always aspirational, right? To create that amazing employee experience. And I think it's important to have an aspirational vision so that we know where we're going.
Yeah, but I love that though, because that's something which really helps me in terms of operating from your why and your purpose is so much easier to make decisions, because it's very easy to say, are we hiring against this? So you just kind of use that as a foundation for everything. And it doesn't matter how big you are or how big you scale, you can always go back to that and say, is this aligned with our why and our purpose? If not, the answer is no. We move on. It's not the right decision. And I love that. And it's really helped me to understand where we're going. And obviously it does change a little bit as you pivot the business and things can change, but it's always good to have that in place. And that's what I was actually going to ask you next is, we spoke last time and you was really passionate about scaling culture by hiring against values. Can you talk a bit more about how you do that from a technical standpoint? What does that look like?
The thing that was really important to me with the values part was to make sure that you don't over prescribe it. Because I think we so often especially within the people or HR, we like to put a handbook together and we can do, it's like, we check the boxes and that's how we do it. And then we write a policy on it, right? Which I hate policies. I like guidelines, call whatever you want. But I think it's important to know that people are people, right? And that looks and feels so differently. But I think at the end of the day, when we thought about our values, we wanted them to be authentic. And I think often with values, and you can do values whatever way makes sense for you, but I think as long as they're authentic, that's when they really can stick. And so, our values are: we deliver solutions, we always aim higher, and we are heroes because we care. And heroes because delivery hero, we call our employees heroes. And this kind of embodies everything. And so there's different ways that you can easily ask candidates questions on, hey, when have you, complex problem, found a solution? When have you iterated on a solution? When have you shown somebody that you care? You care, by stepping in, or, ultimately we want to make sure we care about our community, we care about our employees, we care about our consumers, and that's important for us to see within our candidates. And so, I think making sure you put it in your people processes, that's the way the values stick. So hiring is clearly one of those areas. We are growing exponentially. We are still hiring. We're in a fortunate position to be continuing to hiring. Here in Berlin, we have a target of hiring about, between 15 to 20 product and tech people a week. That's just product and tech. We probably do close to 50 a week of hires. And so it's important to scale.
Is that just for you internally? That's not riders.
And that's not riders. That's just here in Berlin. So that's not including.
What are you roughly doing?
Yeah, and that's where our marketing team gets involved to make sure that we are putting out different ads in different places. So we are really
the app organically. They have like a rider version of the app where they can sign up. And is that how it works? I don't actually know.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, okay. There's a rider app, and that's all of the competition. I don't think people talk about that rider apps are also in an area of competition, and so it's important for us to invest and get some of the best product and tech people out there globally to work on this app, because our rider app is so key to making sure that our riders know where to go. It gets super technical, from a geolocation perspective, because we are operating anywhere from the Philippines to, UAE and Dubai, right? So, it is literally all over the world. And so I'm making sure that we have the right product and tech people and that we're hiring the best and brightest. So, values are one way that we do that. And we make sure that we put it in the rest of our people processes, because we need to reiterate that they matter to us. It's one thing up on the wall. It's another thing to say that they're really important. It's one thing to say, hey, we hire against them. But if you're not actually evaluating the what and the how is our values, then they just become stuff that you talk about.
What are some of the ways that you're personalizing the employee experience?
Our vision is to create an amazing employee experience. And I get asked that question all the time. It's like, all right, what does that look like? What does amazing look like? And I'm like, well, you tell me, because I can make an assumption. I can make a data informed assumption on what that may or not look like. And I view employees that they're no different than consumers, right? We're all consumers at the end of the day. And one of our areas in which we always say with our consumers is that we need to provide choice, right? So we have over 500,000, 500,000 restaurants on our platform globally, right? And we believe that is a differentiator for us, is that we provide choice to our consumers. Employees are no different than that, right? We need to provide them choice. I would say before this work from home situation, I always said, hey, we need to provide them choice on where and how they work. So may that be at home, may that be on a sofa at work, may that be in a stand-up desk, whatever it may look like. If you come and see our offices here in Berlin, we really are going through this metamorphosis of providing options for places to work. And so I really do think people give their best in different ways, and work workplace strategy is a really big area of that, and I think it's an underplayed it's an underplayed part of your environment. And so that's one way of giving choice. Benefits, of course, are another one.
Yeah.
And and learning is another part of it, which I know that you and I will talk about later this week, is learning. And I think you have to understand that people's best looks different. The way that people learn is different, and the way that people work is different. And providing them choices so that they can choose is really important, so they can bring their best every day.
Yeah, that's a good example you use, by the way, because I found in terms of working from home and the choices, because I have found so many friends of mine that used to say to me, I'd love to work from home. I'd love to work from home, who have over the last few weeks saying, I cannot wait to go back to work. I cannot wait to be in an office. I hate being at home on my own. I feel isolated. I feel, I miss that water cooler chat. I miss that. And these are the same people that go, Chris, you run your own business. You get to be flexible. You're so lucky. And they're literally dying to go back to work and see their peers. The same people that were telling me before, they would love to work from home.
What I think is interesting, and I do think that having spoken to a lot of my peers in the industry, we often, I know other chief people officers, CHROs, have been really pushing the virtual work, and often we get resistance in this, right? And I think it's so often we hear, oh, they won't be productive at home. I can't measure their productivity, etc. And I think we were really trying to capitalize on this opportunity, right? Like, we are in a unique environment, so we've been trying to capture our employees' voice, right? So we've been sending out feedback. Hey, how are you guys doing? Are you getting the right information? Are you set up for success at home? And what we've found is only 1% want to work from the office every day. So this is our Berlin-based, just 1%.
Was that a surprise to you?
It was a surprise to me. I definitely thought that I would have more people, because I know what my peers, and they're gonna hate that I say this, my peers with the rest of the executives, they quite like working from home, and you're able to really focus, and I totally understand it. Again, it's choice. But to me, I have always worked one day from home. It's my Fridays. I usually make it my meeting-free day, and I call it my sanity day. Right? Because I know that's the day that I can just laser focus on a project and knock out my inbox. So this is a unique environment to really test out work from home, because a lot of us have multiple priorities at home. I know that you have a little lady at home. I have 2 kids myself. And so I think this isn't the best environment to test it out. But I think it's an opportunity for us to really try to push the choice piece for the rest of those that look out for a workplace strategy, because again, like, we can't assume that what works for us will work for somebody else. And just like we as consumers want choice, our employees are no different. Making sure that you're getting their voice, that you're evaluating their voice, and you're working on that data is really important in that process.
When you reached out to your employees and said, how can we best support you? What was some of the other feedback you got, or some of the things that you suggested to help them?
One of the other things, and we talked a little bit about this before, was we wanted to check in on their mental health, right? Because I think we so often are focused on the parents, which I can empathize with. What has been scary for me is just really thinking about my employees who are by themselves, right? This is very isolating. And here in Berlin, our office is, we have over 80 nationalities represented in our office here in Berlin. So we are a very diverse environment. And so we wanted to check in on their mental health, because most of us, myself included, I'm originally from the US, we can't physically make it home. So if anything happens in your home country and not be able to get back, that's really kind of isolating, right? You're not close to friends and family. We had quite a few that had just moved here for this job. So it was important for us to check in on their well-being. So we asked, like, hey, how are you doing? We had little icons on, like, sunshine, rainy, etc. And it's because we wanted to tap into that. And I think I had mentioned to you, we had recently given free subscriptions here for our Berlin-based team for mindfulness and mental health app. And there's lots of them out there. I'm not going to endorse any of them. There's plenty out there.
I'm gonna give a shout out. By the way, I'm using the same one. So yeah.
I do it daily, so I really recommend it. It's just a way for you just to kind of center yourself and create a routine around it. But yeah, I mean, we wanted to check in on their mental health, and that was really important. The other thing was we wanted to know as a company, like, how well were we doing in communicating? Did they feel supported? Did they understand what we were doing? Did they understand the reasons why we were making these decisions, right? Because we go back to the why.
The why, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the why is so important, and I think that's the thing that most leaders underestimate is the why in our communication. So we asked, how are we doing? What kind of information do they need to know? And then we also asked about benefits. It goes back to the choice piece, right? Like, what additional benefits do you need in order to do your job? And then the last but not least, the main topic for me that I feel is outside of workplace and making sure people mental health is in check is performance. I know that we're not unique in this. A lot of companies move into their performance management process in mid-year, and how do we evaluate performance in this environment? How do we do it in a non-biased way that we make sure that we are setting our team up for success, that we're having meaningful conversations that are focused on growth, right? So yeah, I mean, I think they're complex conversations and they're complex questions in which there is no right answer to. But
no one's done it before. There's no playbook.
Right.
There's no playbook.
But it was a lot of great feedback that are I will say that is one thing that I am always very grateful for, is that our employees feel free to provide us transparent feedback. And I think we asked for it, therefore we should be ready for it. And so yeah, it's been great ways to get and solicit feedback and use that data to make informed decisions.
Yeah, that's part of the culture that you've built, though. It only works though when you actually do something about it, though. That's where I see a lot of companies going wrong, sending out their surveys, and then they get the feedback and then nothing ever happens. That's the worst thing you can do.
No, and I don't know. I mean, I think it's one of those things, also being transparent and being open and really creating spaces for people. And that goes along with our CSR strategy, because one of our pillars is diversity, inclusion, and inclusivity is really important in providing space. And I remember having a conversation with our CTO here. And I said, how exhausting must it be? I remember going back in the days, like when I first was starting to work, and I worked in consulting, and I had my professional self, and then I had my outside of work self. And we always talked about that, like professionalism. And, I used to go suited and booted is what we called it. Yeah, I mean, I think that was a UK term. I'm pretty sure.
Exactly. That is a UK term. Yeah.
Not an American term, but my first boss was British, and there you go. And I just remember having these two selves, right? And I'm like, these days, like, you bring your whole self. I think it was Sheryl Sandberg that has coined that term. But how exhausting is it to have, like, one version of yourself and then another version of yourself? And at work, I want to try to create at Delivery Hero a space where people just feel they can be themselves, that we are respectable, and that we care about each other. But at the end of the day, you don't have to wear a different shelf version of yourself when you come into the office, because that can be exhausting. And at the end of the day, we want to be able to give our best both at home and at work. And so, so anyways, I could get on
that for years, by the way. When I first I got my first job in the city, I really struggled with that, because I came from a very poor area of East London and I had a certain accent. So I created this facade where as soon as Chris got, to London Bridge and got off the train, I was this guy in the suit, clean shaven, handkerchief, tie, and I spoke a little bit differently and I acted a different way, and it was exhausting. And unfortunately, the culture of the business I worked in, that was also expected.
Yeah.
That you conform to this avatar of what they said a sales executive in that particular role should sound, should look like. And it was really exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, I think authenticity is not underrated these days. I think Brene Brown talks about it a bit in her books, and it wouldn't be a podcast if I wasn't going to drop at least one book in it. So I am an avid reader. I read over 60 books a year, and I love them. Over 60 books. I have 2 kids that monopolize the TV, so what else am I going to do?
I'm like a podcast guy, as you probably can tell. I don't know how many I listen to every year, but I listen to a lot, because for me, it's I can do it multitasking. I could be in the gym, out for a run, in the shower. I've even got a podcast speaker in the shower. No, wherever I am, I'm like consuming. Whereas with
Yeah,
the book, I struggle actually. It depends, what different things work for different people.
absolutely. But I think the being vulnerable, but being just authentic is so key. And I think that was one of the podcasts. There's a lot of podcasts out there on there. There's a lot of books out there on it. But I do think it's one of those things that it does take some time. And I hope that people that are starting out in their career, that they have the confidence in that. With me, knowing that I was trying to move into an executive role, being female, and I was often the only woman in the room, right? And/or I'm from the South. I had a very strong accent growing up, so I hear you on that. And I think you so often try to dilute a little bit about who you are, but that also is what makes you unique and makes you so special. And so I'm with you. I think bringing your whole self, and I'm using a lot of terms today and a lot of catchphrases, but I think that
it's important though, because people throw that around a lot, that bring your whole self to work, and like they throw it around very loosely, but it's so important. Yeah, tell everyone a bit about hero communities.
Yeah, so our hero communities, some companies call them BRGs or employee resource groups, but we call them hero communities, and that was part of also our CSR strategy, right? So it's under our diversity inclusion pillar within our CSR strategy, and that's really just creating spaces in which people can have space to be themselves, right? To talk about your whole self at work. And two of our first groups that were founded were the Women's Network, Delivery Hero Women's Network, but also our Muslim group. And so really just creating a community that they have people who they can relate to at work. And also our Pride community, of course. We call them, Proud Heroes is what we call them here at Delivery Hero. And it's important for people to have a space in which they have people that are either advocates for them, or they think like them, and or they just have space to be themselves. And of course we want that at work, but we also want communities in which they can really thrive. And one of the science behind engagement, if you guys, here's another book, but if there's a whole Q12 out is this whole science behind engagement. So the 12 questions that every engagement surveys are all based off of. And one of them is, do I have a friend at work? Do I have a best friend at work? And those hero communities are really an environment in which you can really foster relationships at work that may be outside of your team, especially if you're in smaller teams. This is an opportunity for you to really foster that environment, right? And so, that is one of the basic levels of engagement, is to really have friends at work, have people that care about you outside of just your development. And so I think that that's often a missed area, because they're just like, friends at work. I, have my friends outside of work, which is also important. But for us, it's really, we want to make sure that we create these places for people to get together and share their thoughts and their beliefs, whatever it may be. And so some of the other feedback, going back to the question you had before, was people miss their friends. They miss seeing people at the work.
Yeah, that's the common one I keep hearing from a lot, and even my own team. We did it was one of our employees, Ivan, actually, who's our producer, who you met before we went live. It was his anniversary, a 2-year anniversary. I asked the team to send me some videos wishing him happy anniversary, and the first thing that everyone said in the video, which I didn't plan, was, "I miss you, Ivan." And then the message, and I didn't say anything. It's just like a common theme in the messages. They all started with, "I miss you, Ivan," and then the message. And I thought, oh, that's so, like, I didn't expect that, which is great, but also quite sad at the same time, that we don't get to see each other as well. So it's very, very important. One thing that always impressed me with you is every time we speak, you're so ambitious, both yourself and the business. And I know that you also have an ambitious goal this year to donate 10 million meals. Is that correct?
So it's by the end of 2021. So it's one of our pillars. Again, I keep going about the pillars for CSR. Giving back is one of them, and giving back, environment, diversity, inclusion, and then ethics are our 4 pillars under our CSR strategy. And giving back, a big piece of that is to give back to those that have food insecurity. And 9% of the world's population out there actually has food insecurity, and I would imagine in the current state it might even be more than that.
Yeah.
Right? So we've partnered actually with the World Food Program to provide a platform and a marketplace for us to be able to provide our consumers an opportunity to donate meals. And so we have the ambition by the end of 2021 to donate at least 10 million meals globally. And that's something that, food is what we do, right? It's what we deliver. And we want to be able to give back, again, an opportunity to impact the communities in which we are so able to serve. And I think that that's one of those things that, there's a psychological theory that's called give back to get back. And I think that these are projects in which our teams here are working on making sure that we can provide that in our checkout. How do we put that in our checkout system in order so people can donate, et cetera? And so I really encourage, anybody to think about ways that they can impact the communities in which they operate, but incorporate our team members in doing that, because it is a way for them to give back, to get back.
Yeah.
A way just to recharge, to get re-engaged, etc. So yeah, one of our ambitions though for 2021 is to donate 10 million meals. Another one of our ambitions is to actually be completely carbon neutral by the end of 2021. We are, as mentioned, a really large business, and we realize we have an obligation with all of the deliveries that we do. They're not just on bikes, they're also cars. We have a lot of offices around the world to really try to offset that. And in addition to that is making sure that we produce 2.6 billion items of waste a year. And we have an obligation to the environment, to our communities, to do better, to figure out a sustainable way to do packaging in a different way. And so that's another one of our ambitions, is to really try to come up with sustainable packaging, in the next 2 years. We won't probably get there 100%, but we're really trying to establish the foundation of making sure that our packagings are sustainable.
Very ambitious. And I love the fact that you're driving this, People think if we told everyone about those two ambitious goals, the last thing that sounds really bad to say, they wouldn't relate that back to HR having an impact to do that. But you are really driving this in the business. I know it may sound really bad that I said that, but it's true. That's the common thought process. And I wanted to bring that up because you're really making an impact and driving that within both your HR or your CS role and comms. Before we wrap up, in terms of scaling the business, because obviously this is kind of one of the core focuses of today's show, it all sounds amazing, but I'm sure it wasn't easy. What were some of the challenges that you faced personally during that journey, and maybe some advice you could give to others that perhaps are going through a similar experience?
Yeah, I mean, scaling's hard, right? It's even harder when you're already big. And as I mentioned, the best thing that I could have done was to create the vision, because we were able to really set the strategy off of that. The other really big learning that I think when I look back on 2018, it's my mantra now, is don't make assumptions. What I mean by that is I think I might have alluded to it before, is we make assumptions as leaders all the time that people understand what we're saying. They understand our why. And so, if you're doing a new strategy, if you're doing a new process, or if you're establishing anything, explain, educate, and inform, and then do it again. And I think
that's the important part.
And then do it again. Do it again, and continue to do it again. And I make some assumptions that baseline understanding of certain key people processes and philosophies we're understanding, or I made some assumptions that people understood where I was going and why. I communicate a lot. I like to communicate, which you probably have picked up on, but that doesn't mean that I was communicating in an effective way. And so it was really clear to me that I needed to, educate, inform, and do it again, and communicate, right? It was really important. I think that was a really key learning when scaling, because you can only scale if the business is bought in, right? The business will continue to do what they're going to do, but if you have processes and guidelines that you need to implement, you can't do it without them. And I think that is such a key part that, HR leaders often do. We go into our little office, we come up with these great people strategy, very empathetic, very focused on our people. And then we go to the business and they're just like, what? So a thing that I learned pretty early on, and this is the thing I always say to people, is make sure your business is bought in. And what I mean by business, I mean your peers, if you're on the executive team, your CEO needs to be your biggest advocate. And they need to believe in whatever you do. And I think that was something that was a key learning. And then the last one is a little bit more, this is more just a personal thing. Those in Europe will probably do an eye roll when I say this. I have worked in a global setting my entire career. I started doing consulting in Tokyo. I've always worked globally. It's very different, though, I think, having been most of the last 10 years in the US and then moving here to Europe. And the way that we communicate as Americans is very different. And we use a lot of words, and I often got asked early on, and this was my biggest learning point, was people lost me after, I lost most people after the second or third sentence, right? We always sandwich, we do the compliment sandwich. You Brits do it too. We're no different. We are
say it in a very bit more of a derogatory way, but yes, I know where you're going with that.
We're very polite, right? And I think I got so much feedback at the beginning. Was just like, Jeri, what are you trying to say? You sound great, but like, what are you trying to say? And I think here's another book. The Culture Map it never came to real understanding until I was here. I had worked for a foreign company prior to this too. I spoke in a different language for most of it, but I still didn't understand it to this capacity until I moved here to Germany. And it's been really kind of refreshing to kind of change and be more direct, but you can still be direct in a nice way. And so I think that was also a learning for me, was you can communicate, but make sure you're communicating in an effective way. And I think, again, if you're going to try to scale the business, my major takeaway is if you're scaling people, processes, etc., make sure you have an advocate in your CEO, and make sure you do processes in which that can scale and that matter. And for us, that was making sure that we put our values into all of the processes that are related to people, and that's how you scale culture too. I mean, it's just that simple.
That's it, everyone. That's it. It's easy. It's a wrap.
You guys got that right.
Yeah, you got that right, guys. Well, look, thank you so much for taking the time out to join us. I look forward to following the growth of the business and you and what's going on closely. And I wish you all the best until we see you on Thursday and there on after. All right.
Thanks so much for having me.
See ya. Bye.